Hello and welcome to PMCLounge.com. In this video, we are talking about the three pillars of Scrum. And as always, a quick reminder about the links that you are going to find in the description. First link is going to be an article on this topic over at our official website, PMCLounge.com. So if you are into reading articles rather than watching videos, you can check the first link in the description out. Second link is going to contain all the videos that we have done on Agile so far. These videos are going to help you prepare for the Agile part of your PMP exam. So second link, entire playlist of Agile. And third link is all the videos that are going to help you for your PMI-ACP certification preparation. So three important links, do check them out. Let's get started. Quick reminder, please hit the like button and feed the YouTube algorithm. Now, before we discuss the three pillars, we have to go over the major difference between traditional waterfall and agile. This slide is going to do the groundwork for our topic and understanding the three pillars. Now, when you're dealing with the waterfall, right? When you are working on a project in the waterfall environment, what happens is you plan everything in the beginning itself. You plan everything in the advance. Like they say about waterfall, plan the work and then work the plan, right? So you plan everything in advance. And now, of course, you may not have all the answers in the beginning itself, and that is why you forecast and you make assumptions. Now, based on this plan that you have, you start execution. Now, once you are executing and once you're doing the project work, it is possible that some of your assumptions prove wrong, some of your forecast proves wrong. So what you do is then you introduce the change control process. This change control process takes care of introducing any change which was required because your forecast or assumption went wrong, and then you continue executing. So that's what traditional waterfall is all about. You plan everything in the beginning, plan the work the plan. But when it comes to agile basically works in a cyclical fashion. You plan, you implement, you review, you retrospect, and then again you plan, right? So you don't plan everything in the beginning itself, right? You are working in a cyclical manner. You are basically delivering small chunks of your project. So what happens here is that Scrum teams, the teams that work in the agile environment, they basically reject the idea that every project question needs to be answered in the beginning of the project itself, which is precisely what we are doing when we follow the waterfall model, right? We answer every question in the beginning itself, but Scrum teams don't do that. In fact, Scrum teams don't answer every question in the beginning of a sprint as well. What they instead do is that Scrum teams, they make decisions based on real information as soon as it is discovered. So as soon as a Scrum team working in an agile environment discovers certain information, they are going to review, they are going to retrospect, and then they are going to change their plans, make their plans again. So that's a big difference, a major difference between traditional waterfall and agile. Now, we just talked about how you take decisions based on real information in agile environment. Now, how do you do so? How do you take decisions as soon as a real information is discovered? The Scrum team basically makes use of three pillars here. These three pillars are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. In the coming slides, we go over these three one by one. So let's do that. Before we go there, a quick reminder, all our PMP courseware articles and videos are available on this link, pmclounge.com/PMP training. Check it out, everything's free. So let's talk about the first pillar of Scrum, which is transparency. Now, transparency is when a Scrum team decides together what items to be included in the sprint and what it would take to do the same. So the Scrum team basically comes together and they decide what all items from the backlog will be included in the sprint, right? Which will become eventually part of the sprint backlog. And what all does it take to include these items, right? So that's something that the Scrum team does it together and they do it transparently. all work done by each Scrum team member is basically visible to the rest of the Scrum team. That's what happens when there is transparency. Everyone knows what kind of work all Scrum team members are doing. So that's the key behind the transparency pillar. Okay, let's talk about the second pillar of Scrum, which is inspect. Now, we have this daily Scrum meeting, right? So in the daily Scrum, the Scrum team inspects each item that's being worked upon. So whatever that's been worked upon will be inspected in the daily Scrum. Now, of course, this is not necessarily the entire item, right? You are not going to review the entire item that is being worked upon. But if there are any general findings, because all the work is essentially transparent to everyone. So if anyone has any finding, any feedback, that is something that is discussed in the daily Scrum, and that's what inspection is all about. Now, of course, this is because the daily Scrum is a very short meeting. But I know of instances where in daily Scrum, people tend to review everything, and the daily Scrum tends to, go beyond what it is supposed to, right, in terms of the time required. But that's not the textbook daily Scrum. In the textbook daily Scrum, you are quickly basically sharing the findings of each of the items that are being worked upon by fellow Scrum team members. All right, so let's talk about the third and final pillar of Scrum, which is adapt. Adapt basically means being comfortable to changes, and that's exactly what Scrum teams are. If changes are discovered, the Scrum team adapts to them. The Scrum team is welcoming of changes. They are comfortable in implementing changes. Example could be adding or removing items from the sprint backlog based on real-time information and sprint schedule. So it is possible that earlier the Scrum team thought one of the sprint backlog items could be delivered in the ongoing sprint. But if there is some real-time information discovered by the Scrum team, and it makes the Scrum team realize that they will not be able to deliver certain item in the ongoing sprint itself, they basically remove the item from the sprint backlog, right? So that's how Scrum teams are basically comfortable with changes and they adapt to changes. Now, this slide ties back to the first slide that we talked about, the major difference between waterfall and agile, right? It's a cycle. What this means is transparency, inspect, and adapt. These are not one time activities, right? This is all these are basically cyclical in nature. So the cycle continues every day until the time box expires and the sprint is complete. So until the sprint is complete, every day the Scrum team follows the three pillars of Scrum, that is being transparent, inspection, and adaptation. And this is not just limited to daily Scrum, but these three pillars are made use of in other Scrum events as well, like sprint planning, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. So that's how these three pillars are important and are used across the entire sprint. Question for this video: which of the three Scrum pillars do you think is most important? Which of these three is most important? Transparency, inspect, or adapt? Let me know in the comments below. And that's all that we had in this video. I hope you got value out of it. If you did, please consider contributing to pmclounge.com by heading over to pmclounge.com/contribute. Don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP and project management resource. Thank you.